Hey everybody, hey our Twitch land, how we doing today? Welcome to Howdy Partner. Hey Howdy Partner, what is Howdy Partner? It is a show where we bring on AWS partners to come and actually show off their technology, show off their solutions they built. So rather than just reading about them, rather than just seeing if everything's good, hearing you can see it live in action. Today we're with Sysdig. One of their main focus is going to be the product called Sysdig Secure. It's kind of your cloud management platform. Today, again, joining me is Ms. Kruthi Rao. Hello, Kruthi. How are you doing today?
Hey, James. I'm doing great. How you
Hey,
doing?
good, good. It's stopped raining, which is nice. So, uh, yeah. And then also coming on with us from Sysdig is Mr. Ryan O'Daniel
Hi
and
everyone, how are you?
Akhil Desai.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, friends. Hello. So with that, we have, I'm sure we've driven this point to the ground. We have the AWS shared responsibility model. What is that about, Kruthi? Just for anyone who doesn't know, maybe I don't know. I need a refresher. I just work here, but come
Yeah,
on.
sure. Yeah, it's pretty much from the name itself. So the responsibility is kind of shared between AWS and our customers. So AWS itself is responsible for security of the cloud, by which I mean we're responsible for the infrastructure and security of the data centers, whereas our customers would be responsible for security in the cloud. So this can be the data that they're storing in the cloud, or it can be any of the encryption that they want in the cloud, or if they are taking a service where they have to manage, or like a service such as EC2, then they have to do all of the patching and the upgrades and all of that. But if they are taking a serverless system where AWS is managing the services for them, then that part would also be covered by AWS. So just to give a recap of that, it shared responsibility model. It's a security responsibility that needs to be handled by both AWS and our customers.
Nice. So, okay, so let me get this straight. If I started a fintech company and just put it on AWS, does that mean I'm good to go? Like, people can just hand me their credit card information. I can just spin up a cluster, and boom, I'm in the cloud, right? It's your responsibility or something.
Yeah. So there, the infrastructure responsibility would be AWS responsibility, but the credit card information that you're storing and the information of the customer's credit card and their name or any PII data, that should be secured by you. And we give you that, yeah, we give you that, or we give you the tools to secure the data there. So we have multiple tools that AWS offers, and we provide encryption methods which you can utilize. And I think that's also where our partners are going to help us and give us some ways by which we can further enhance the security and help our customers use the tools.
Okay, so yeah, that does sound like a lot of extra work that I don't really want to do. So I'm gonna let Sysdig do it for me, I guess. Ryan or Akil, maybe you want to tell us how you could make me not have to work as much to secure all my stuff.
Sure. So back to that point that you just made, if you don't do anything, the auditors might want a word with you.
Oh, that sounds like more work. No, okay, I'll take it. I'll try my best.
Okay. So what we can do at Sysdig is help you and your customers secure their cloud and containers environments, and we also provide monitoring services, right? So with Sysdig, you can do a bunch out of the box. So while many of our security methods are policy based, we do give our customers a lot of those policies through a construct we call managed policies, whereby all they need to do is install our agent into, for example, their EKS environment, and then they can just toggle on our policies from our console, and then they would have out of the box with Sysdig and AWS, they'd have ways to meet compliance standards in their runtime environments, for example.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That does help ease my mind a little bit. Yeah. So if y'all want to show us a little bit, give us a little taste of it, that would be great.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to start with just like, it's not like I'm going to kill anybody with slides or anything. I'm just going to tell a quick
Oh
story
no.
about where we come from. Sysdig is our mission is to secure cloud and container deployments, right? And ensure the reliability of those deployments. We are built around open source tooling, which is important to us because that's out in our DNA. If you look back at our founder, one of our founders is Loris Dejoani, and he, in a previous life, wrote the source code to win PCAP. So, for example, if you're taking a packet capture at the network layer, that source code is a branch off of what our founder wrote. And then he went and helped lead the development of a product called Wireshark, right? So that's also
Oh,
based on
okay.
open source technology, and that leverages the packet capture technology as well. So developed that product, and then he thought about, how can I apply those policies to help secure container and cloud deployments? And that's how Sysdig was born. So what Sysdig can offer is packaging around those open source components that ties everything together, allows us to manage the way that all works together and implement policies in a very time efficient manner to help make sense of everything that's going on in customers' AWS environments, for example.
Okay. Yeah, because I know I've seen accounts where I've had to go through like 500 different IAM roles or users or whatever, and yeah, having to keep track of all that is not too fun, but it's part of the job. So
Yeah. And there's a lot out there, right? So like if we're just talking about like a CNAP platform, that's a fun acronym. But there's three components to that, right? There's CSPM, there's KIM, which is the cloud entitlements management, right? Where we're talking about permissions. And then there's the container security portion, which is CWPP. So we have to tie together all those layers to truly secure our workloads that are running in containers, right? Because you have to secure the abstraction layer that the containers are running on, which could be EKS or ECS or what have you, right? And then we also need to secure the cloud resources that are underlying those. So we do that through CSPM. And then there's the entitlements management, which is making sure that there are not excessive permissions between these various resources.
Yeah, I mean, like it reminds me of Shrek. Ogres are like onions, but like
layers.
the cloud is like this is all security. It's like layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. And like Eddie Murphy is recently in the news because he was on the Emmys and he said something that was profoundly close to my heart. Hey, young people, listen up. This is how we don't get in trouble. Pay your taxes was one. There's a couple more. I'll let you check that out on your favorite internet search engine. But there's a lot of things that you can do or you can explore, and AWS makes that incredibly easy to do. So no longer do we have to be like locked up by, oh, I need a procurement for a piece of hardware so I can go do a thing. It's like, hey, developers, go do your thing and be successful. And that's exciting. And then, oh, hey, by the way, open source is what's helping drive a lot of this technology and innovation. Sysdig being, started on that, extending that. If you're using these technologies, you've got a leg up on helping and being successful with that. I mean, I think that there's value in what our commercial solution is all about, and I'll hope to articulate a little bit that with Akhil's help here. But it's an exciting time. I was asking the hosts here what they were into, and well above my ability and capabilities. But I think machine learning and James, you shared that you were like a developer, but it's this idea of like I'm born in 1981, so that makes me a dude of like certain age, and I'm proud to embrace middle age. But like, the technology and the enablement and the ability for kids to get like a $35 Raspberry Pi and just do incredible stuff is
Right.
incredible. And there's probably Docker on Raspberry. I would presume there is, because it's on ARM. Just a lot of different interesting ways where containers are helping extend, or taking data to places that I support the government in my full-time job, and they have a center of excellence. Thank you, Department of Defense. Thank you, Air Force. Thank you, folks that spearheaded that. But it's exciting to see, like, even the government, is generally behind this, with the times as they are. Like, they're embracing these technologies, and just it gets me out of bed. That all said, ogres are like onions. The cloud is certainly like an onion because it's got what? Anybody? Layers. Yeah.
It's kind of funny what you're saying about the government. What is the old saying about, if you want job security, just learn Fortran and COBOL and then just go work for the government?
Right. Well, and then, like, how are they taking these? And we work at a containers focused, microservices focused security company, though. We're opening up that aperture as we speak. But, like, if there's not, we focus on containers. So when your hammer is the only tool in your tool belt, everything becomes something that you should whack, right? But the government, maybe they don't need to do, things like going to microservices, because maybe there's no need for that. So I would say, use the right tools as appropriately, or extend things out, talking to those legacy databases or Fortran things, like the things that you will always have a job because no one else wants that job, and be successful and have fun. I'm on the hook to share some information, drop some knowledge. So, gosh, help us all. I feel like, I'm not a developer. I've talked about open source. I've, shared a little bit of what we're all about. But if, I think this has been shared with everyone. It's not a black box. That's sort of exciting. You can see what's going on. You can maybe play with this beforehand. You can have an understanding of what we're open and all about. But today we're talking about security, but really Sysdig started out back to those Wireshark roots around visibility. When containers were this little, opaque black box, how would we sit there and engage with them? And maybe an ability didn't exist back in 2014, which in like my years, oh God, my neck didn't hurt to turn, my back didn't hurt as much when I slept on it wrong, and maybe I was having a little bit more fun than I am at this age. But pivot from that, and now we're focusing on security. It makes a lot of sense, and it's exciting to see where we've come. And I've been here since 2019. Akhil, how long have you been here, dude?
A year.
Yeah, it's exciting to see where we've come, and like all the good things coming. That all said, this is a nascent market. Maybe I'm misspeaking. In the government, it feels like it's a nascent market. I'm curious, Kruthi and James, what are you guys seeing for container adoption and stuff like that? I feel like containers are going to take over the world. What do you guys see in your patch?
Yeah, absolutely. The job I was talking about before, that we ran almost exclusively on EKS. Basically, almost everything. Even like we had a Jenkins server running on it in a container, I believe. And yeah, just the getting rid of that whole "it works on my machine" kind of mentality. It just it's a little bit of extra work maybe at the beginning to make sure that everything does work. But once it does, then it's like you don't have to worry about anything else. Like, absolutely, it's containers are changing everything as we speak.
I mean, gosh, I used to support 3 developers on a DoD contract, and I was the, I guess, friendly, chatty guy. And they would bring their problems to me, and I would have to like tell them, like, that's a developer problem. You should go talk to the other people. But containers have made, like, I'm in love with this. I'm not a developer, but I if you were going to peg me as like somebody, I'd be the guy that's like infrastructure. So I like Kubernetes that helps me deploy things from those developers with all the things that it needs, so we can all be successful. But yeah, Wireshark to Sysdig to Falco, it's been a heck of a ride. gosh, why does this all matter? So what? Who cares? I think the Docker experience as a newbie. Yeah, like I was sort of a funny thing. I was talking to my wife's aunt, and she's probably 10 or 20 years older than me, and I've shared the age in which I was born. But she's doing Docker stuff at her job, and this was a family get together, and me and her were sitting there just chatting, and certainly speaking English. I think the crowd on this session would understand that, but the rest of the family, while she was making Saturday's dinner, looked at us like we were speaking another language, and that language was like probably dolphin. And so it was cool to see like her getting excited to continue on, learn, grow, and others hopefully as well. But while what we have done in the past is good, we shouldn't stop. Since we're taking on new technologies, what we've done in the past doesn't necessarily transfer, because of now we've got namespaces, deployments, and all the different things that can help us do this at scale. Good, but if it's not something that was built or born in the cloud, and it's sort of like tacked on as an afterthought, you're going to have a bad time. You may miss things that you might want to do. I don't know. Thoughts? Am I crazy? Tell me.
No,
Quick
seems good.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, could you just give us an overview of why container security is important? I mean, I'm myself not really well versed in containers, so yes, I'd like to know a little bit about why is security that important, and why is it so hard to maintain security in containers?
That is a good question. I think for all of the reasons that security is hard. This is the traditional security challenges. You gotta fix vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities, I think, was it Postgres just had something in the news that's sort of scary. Maybe you've like heard about S-bombs because they're maybe the new hot, sexy, fun stuff. But like, how do we consume, or how do we take action on all of the vulnerabilities that are out there?
Yeah.
I'm like, what if we did achieve nirvana and got to zero vulnerabilities? All right, well, you still have to do those in containers. Now you've got them at scale. Good luck.
Yeah.
Akhil?
So, I mean, to add to that, specifically, containers are an abstraction layer, right, on a host. Like, if we just look at what they are, they're kind of operating at this layer above the operating system. And we love that as developers, because we can spin up infrastructure, we can spin up these environments, we can test our code, we can tear it down. We don't have to rely on other people to do that, right? And whatever we are doing will work almost on any machine. The issue there is that because they're so mobile, because they're operating at that abstraction layer, that they don't operate like traditional hosts. So, for example, containers are living for a very short period of time, right? So we found that the plurality of containers are living less than 5 minutes, right? So if we, I think it's 44%, and we actually have updated numbers coming soon, and I think that number is going to go up. So they're short-lived, and because the log files are ephemeral and contained within the container, and the containers are ephemeral,
Yeah,
what happens?
I could see.
What happens when a container is killed off? Right, we have nothing to kind of track what happened. So imagine that you get hit, and the container gets killed off just because of a natural event or whatever. Now, where do you go to deconstruct what happened? And I think the point that we're making at Sysdig is, unless you have something there, you may be left in this position where something's happened, but you can't quite put your finger on it. And we can provide the visibility around a detection event to help solve that problem.
Yeah, that stat I'm reading there, 44% of containers live less than 5 minutes. I didn't know that. Today I learned. I was today years old. That's actually really interesting to me.
I mean, some live for as long as 5 seconds. These are all spun up and spun down, hands off by your orchestrator. How do you do an incident response on that. Like, again, just because we've gone containers doesn't mean that we don't have responsibility for making sure we aren't secure and doing all the things that like we traditionally did. So a lot of fun things to think about. Maybe keep you up at night. I hope not. I guess what I would say Sysdig does is helps folks throughout the container lifecycle. I mean, certainly beyond containers and Kubernetes too. There's so much overlap, just like onions. There's so much overlap between things that AWS does, things that Sysdig does, and I guess how can we sit there, bring that in to make sense of it? And how can we use those developers' time so they can go back to being successful, seeing their friends and family, if bad things happen, responding to that, and then not just like always living at work. You mentioned EKS earlier, James. Like that's my favorite jam ever. I use AKS all the time. Big fan of EKS because it makes sense to me, and I can hack at it and I can be successful at it. But here's a little bit of some fun we can do. We can start with the vulnerability management, and with containers, we've got this idea of build and run. Sysdig can bring an incident response capability, so should things go off the rails, we can take advantage of that. But a lot of times, folks will sit there and want to do interesting things where they can, do this isn't a thing that I've got set up in a lab. This is a thing that I'm going to burn down and trash here once we get finished. But maybe as part of their CI/CD process, they want to scan things before they get to the platform. Cool. You would sit there and use Sysdig's CLI scanner. We would report that in. Off you go. So, other people scan in the pipeline. Sysdig can also sit there and scan as an emission controller. So maybe government background, like I mentioned earlier. You've got malicious insider or insider threat, maybe innocent idiot if the time is right, or maybe just like some new person. What Sysdig can do is say, hey, we've not seen this through the build pipeline. We want to make sure that we stop that so we can have, Sysdig can sit there by way of the admission controller, stop, scan it, and if it passes the security policy setup, allow it to then run, or stop, alert, get the folks to sit there and go see what's going on because Houston, we've got a problem. This is a disgusting image. This is from Sysdig Labs. If you go to Docker Hub, you can find this. This is something that we've got running in the environment. But as you can see, there's a bunch of vulnerabilities. If you go and try to fix all these vulnerabilities, like hopefully you can't get this past your security and this is running in your environment. Maybe it is. The nice thing about Sysdig is, again, going back into what's actionable, what can we do, where is our time best spent? In this instance, go fix 158 of these and you'll be in good shape. If we were to do something not as disgusting, maybe we'll sit there and do Nginx. I think this one comes back a little less disgusting. You'll see something different. And then in the Sysdig web UI, what you can do is take a peek and see the vulnerabilities from the pipeline. Nginx. While I do have these vulnerabilities in the DoD, unless you get a waiver, because everything is waiverable, it seems like, this probably wouldn't be allowed to run. But I think as people become aware of what the art of the possible is and where containers are different from virtual machines, what's actually running, what's exposed, what can be exploited. Let's go fix the two. Let's go put in some other safeguards and let's go about our day so we can sit there and provide the business value and things that keep all of our bosses and their bosses happy.
Yeah, they don't want us. Yeah, they want to make money. They don't want us to sit around and having to fix broken stuff all day. They want us to actually make something.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Right.
I'm not going to say there's no value. Security is important. It's a team sport, and if you don't have security in your title, like, you should still be security conscious. You should still focus for it. But this is a lot easier to go do and then go innovate on top of versus just sit there and try to boil the ocean or do things that you've already done before. here's some information around that. We've got policies, and like, I don't want to go into too much detail around vulnerability management because it doesn't really excite me. I think in my space, the government, they're really focused on that, and that's fine. Curious, maybe this is like top of mind for customers using container in your areas or not. Curious.
Yeah, so no.
This is a dance. What's up?
Sorry. Yeah. Kruthi was going to ask something. I accidentally clicked the wrong thing. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just asking if we could have custom policies built into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes from, this build, we've got the ability to run, as I mentioned before, things hit the platform. If we've not seen them, check them, interrogate them, and then maybe let them pass. And then because vulnerabilities don't stop once you've made it through the CI/CD pipeline, Sysdig has the ability to have a scanner running on your infrastructure to let you know, hey, maybe something has changed and we need to be aware of that. And then you can set alerts and have people be aware of what's going on. I like that a whole lot, but you're absolutely right, Kruthi. These come from policies. And what we do right here out of the box, we want to help our customers be actionable and hit the ground running. So this is the one when I created and asked for a free demo account that was created. And what you can see is like, hey, I want to see if there's rules with vulnerabilities with a fix. If I'm down with that, awesome. If I wanted to duplicate this, I could sit there and do that. And I could do some interesting things. You set the policy versus this being cookie cutter and hoping by coincidence it meets your needs. That's really important when we go to scoping for runtime and watching out for misbehavior or things that you wouldn't expect or anticipate. Versus like, hey, here's our curated view of the world, and you've got to fix. You've got to sit there into our box. I don't know. If you want to create your own, go for it. There's a lot of interesting and fun things that you can do here, but like these are all policies. So it spans certainly the build time. It goes through threat detection and like something, again, we don't live in a perfect world. If we want to do risk acceptance, you can sit there and say, hey, I'm going to allow this. Here's what we need. And I didn't set that up. So shame on me for doing something that I didn't talk to Akhil about, but it allows you to set dates and say, hey, I'm going to allow this to run. I'm not going to block this in the CI/CD pipeline because blocking something in the CI/CD pipeline and alerting a developer to go fix that because it doesn't fit a rule is really the time to do that. At runtime, I don't think that you should sit there and nuke containers from orbit. Why is that? Because they're just going to get spun right up. Automated, automated enforcement or like zapping from space by something could get you into a lot of trouble. What do we call it? Automated remediation, is that the term in industry, Akhil?
Well, so Kubernetes, if it's a Kubernetes managed cluster and we zap a container, Kubernetes is just going to bring it back to life because that's what Kubernetes does, right?
Right.
So
that's what we pay it for. So
that's right. That's what we love Kubernetes.
It's really just restarting compute, basically, which is the same thing that we've been doing forever. But anyways.
I think I've beat this one, and maybe you get to Nirvana and you're like, hey, we've got mastery or we're going in on distro lists and we're taking out all the things that, good for you. Make it harder for the bad folks. Make it, it's an asymmetrical battle. They've got all the time in the world. They're focused on something that they want, maybe you, because you're highly regulated industry, Uncle Sam, etc., versus they might be in some other country shooting across, some fiber link, buried under the ocean. I think I've hit and murdered and just bloodied that to death. Thoughts, anything I missed?
Actually, one challenge that I think we just need to talk about is just sprawling alerts when we're talking about managing vulnerabilities, right? So I've talked to customers that have said some alarmingly high numbers of vulnerabilities that they have running in production, right? So like even at the AWS shows, we have a little joke when we're doing our little spiel, and it's like everybody who's ignoring at least one security alert on their security dashboard, raise their hand, and like everybody raises their hand, and then the response is, "Don't worry, we don't alert shame here," right? But it's true, right? So like these enterprises, these companies, these organizations, they have so many, so they've acquired these security tools, and they all tell them when something's wrong, but now they're inundated by so many alerts that they can't really address them in a meaningful way. And that's really true around vulnerability management, right? Because I mean, if you just look at these numbers and you were to add them up, and somebody said, "I want to run a zero vulnerability environment," well, you're probably gonna have to stop doing business for a while if that's if that's what you're intending to do. So every organization is struggling with, how do I meaningfully address what's going to affect me? And I know what some folks do, some of our competitors do, is they kind of consolidate a bunch of their intelligence across all of their customers, feed it into some sort of algorithm, and then they get a prioritization that kind of works for everybody, right? Where we don't do that, right? So we have a way of what I call it is prioritizing without guesswork, because we're actually taking the customer's environment into account. So Ryan, if you could show the in-use filtering in how that works, that'd be great.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny you say you got people to raise their hands. I know if my boss was sitting next to me, I'd probably be like, "No, I'm not raising my hand," because I don't want him to turn to the left and be like, why are you sitting here?" Sorry.
We can shoot for perfection. Like mom would want us to do that, right?
Of course.
If we achieve that or not, that's another thing. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about for in-use Akhil, or any like?
Yeah. So basically, what we can do is, if we look at, can you just click on one of those vulnerabilities?
Yeah, let's do one that's not egregiously disgusting. I was at the AWS conference. I was like, yeah, hopefully you don't have that. But if you had Sysdig, like this is how you could sit there and really like, clean things up versus going after a bunch. Is there one in particular that you'd like me to do?
Just click on like the security playground one if you can find it. But essentially what you see at the top here are these toggles. So there's one that says has fix, there's one that says exploitable, and there's one that says in use, right? So the has fix is there a documented fix? Exploitable is there a documented exploit, right? That's pretty much well understood. We're all kind of doing that because a lot of us are reaching out to the same open vulnerability databases to get our information, right? But what we can do that differentiates us is that in-use toggle, right? So what that's actually able to tell us is which components inside the image are actually active in runtime. So for example, we could look at images hosted in ECR and being pulled into an EKS environment. And because we are indexing the components of the image, we know what those components are. And because we have a host that's living on your EKS cluster, we can then tie that index to what is being loaded into memory on the host, right? So if it's loaded into memory, then it's code that's being hit by system calls. So then we would mark that as being an in-use vulnerability that would need to be remediated.
Okay. 4 years ago.
There's like, this is the bucket of yuck if we were to pull from such a thing. How do we enable you? How do we get you doing things better, faster, stronger, keeping the enterprise safe? I love that about the vulnerability management. Vulnerability management, people focus on a lot. I'm like, okay, cool, but how are we actionable about that? Another thing that I like, and this is sort of a new addition to Sysdig, is the to-do. We want to sit there and say, hey, what if I'm going to spend my time? What's something that can give me the highest priority or biggest bang for the buck? Maybe I want to do last updated, or maybe Sysdig sees something like Log4j, or when it was the SSL OpenSSL vulnerability 3 thing came out, Sysdig was putting notes in there and it's like, hey, we know this is the tip of everyone's tongue. We think, people are saying this might be the next Log4j. It turned out it really wasn't. Do you want to go scan your environments, both runtime and build time, to see where that, OpenSSL version, I think it was 3, is, and when the vulnerability or when more information drops about that, how you can sit there and sort of prioritize and be protected. I'll appreciate that. I'll appreciate any help I can get. I still use Google Maps to get between my house and the grocery store because I live in Washington D.C. and I'd like to avoid traffic. There's no guarantee that like the one I take 99% of the time isn't going to be traffic, so I'll take that every time.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
No, Akhil, are you still there?
Yeah, he may.
Oh, is he doing the? Okay, yeah, he's going to let the plumber in or something, I guess. Maybe
He's
that's
out
what
in
he's helping.
California, and he's got something going on, and I don't love that for him, and I hope everything is okay. Beyond that, save your time. Let's sit there and let the system, interrogate if you have to meet compliance, those things that you want to get compliance results from. So I used to work for Army Knowledge Online. That was in a traditional data center. I loved it. I learned, all of this from a physical, layer all the way up to now I can understand this in my little Neanderthal brain from the AWS documentation was we abstract everything. But, back in the day, we would have to sit there and create this body of evidence. We would have to sit there and show it to some auditors, and then they'd spot check us to make sure that we're not pulling their leg. And without fail, because it was all manual and because we had jobs to do, we would have to sit there and before the auditors were to arrive, generally rope and pull back incredible drift because life happened. And as a contractor supporting the government, a lot of times, if you break things, that impacts your reward fee, that makes your boss unhappy, that makes his boss unhappy. Well, with Sysdig, what's nice about this is we can sit there and we can see things, if you've reached compliance, awesome. As you sort of drift in and out of compliance, you can ratchet things back using micro adjustments versus having to take a big lasso and, pull things back and possibly break things. So I like that a whole bunch, but, sometimes governance, risk, compliance, feel like that's a thing that I would do very poorly at because I probably wouldn't show up for work. But it, to me, feels like something where it's a gray area, and Sysdig can help with remediation. So maybe you don't have that compliance guru, but you're sitting and you're really interested in this compliance thing. I don't even know what CIS benchmarks for Amazon EKS. And you're like, we need to make sure it's not this for whatever reason. Again, I would get fired for that job. Here's how we can sit there and, check the patch, pull the patch, and then apply the patch. If I had this set up with IAC and I was using GitOps, I could go check that in. It could be pushed out and we could make sure that we don't have this problem pop up in the future. But again, making it actionable, making it something where, maybe I am the compliance czar, and I've been going to school for this since I was age, I don't know, in mom's belly. And I don't agree with you, Sysdig. Okay. Or what if I've got this mitigated by defense in depth or other ways? Well, that's where you can sit there and say, I'm going to accept this risk and give a reason. Maybe it's mitigated, like I mentioned. Maybe it's transfer. Maybe it's not relevant because we don't agree with you. You can do that and then not have that whack your score. Or, maybe we don't want red lights on some dashboard because we have to answer that. And every time our boss or his boss comes by, they're asking about the red dot on the Grafana dashboard, right? Well, with this, you can sit there and hide that, let it snooze for some amount of time while people work on that, but it doesn't sit there and get buried and then forgotten about. So I like that a whole lot because as a person that's lives my life with piles of notes and then my filing system sucks. Don't do this, kids. This will remind me to get back onto that because it's important.
Is there any alerting mechanism that's integrated with this?
Is there any what? Oh, alerting mechanism?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So alerting mechanisms, Git integrations, ticketing integrations, all the things. Notification channels are your friend. I have this stood up. I'm using one, but there's a lot more that you can do.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really easy to get information into Sysdig. It's really easy to get information out of Sysdig. We've got a professional services crew who are absolute rock stars. I'd love to be maybe like 3% as brilliant as all of those guys and gals. But and then we also have like a developer guide where you can get information, and if you want to do like really interesting, fun things, you can do that. I sort of like I've got a story about that too. Not being inappropriate. I was like, do you guys really want me on live? But the automated remediation, we don't suggest it because that can get you into trouble. I was working with a group from Department of Energy, and they wanted automated remediation based off of vulnerability reporting. They're like, hey, if we ever see Log4j, nuke it from orbit. I'm like, that's not a best practice. You don't want to do that. And they're like, no, we need to do that. And I was like, I assure you, the people above me that are very, very smart told me you don't want to do that. Would you like to talk to them? They're like, no, we're good. And so the fun thing that I was able to do as a science experiment was like, full disclosure, I told you, don't do this. Don't call me. Don't be upset with Sysdig. Is I was able to do some Python, and I watched, I got a report dumped based off of, a bunch of different things. And in this instance, I think I was using CSV, and I was looking for the namespace where it wouldn't impact their rancher infrastructure or the Sysdig infrastructure namespaces and stuff like that. And again, as I mentioned, you can scope this out to a lot of interesting things. I only have one cluster, so this isn't a really good example. But if we want to do maybe namespaces, we could probably do that. Kubernetes.namespace.name. Is, if you wanted to sit there and say, hey, I want to protect my namespace, maybe you say is not. You could certainly scope that and make that appropriate versus all or nothing or some other random stuff. And then add conditions. Maybe that vulnerability ID for Log4j in this instance that they were really concerned about. Or maybe we don't want to have things running in our cluster for this, that, or the other. I was able to take a report. You guys could probably do this because you guys are and gals are super brilliant, and do some magic where I could do automated remediation. Not a best practice. People sometimes ask in the vulnerability management, oh, give me an alert for when things change. I'm like, it's not actionable. You don't really want to do that. I think what you might want to focus on if you are so focused on vulnerability management, maybe open your eyes to runtime policies. And as Akhil was mentioning earlier, the runtime policies are an interesting thing. This is where we use open source Falco, a capability that Sysdig created and then donated to the CNCF. We suggest that you start with known bad, so think rules, versus maybe ML or things like that. Don't get me wrong. If you want to use ML, there is a place for machine learning. We've noticed that, looking for crypto mining is a great place to use machine learning, and other things like that. I really, really like that when I started at Sysdig, 3 years ago, this was primarily the focus, but we've opened this up as we've grown as a company, and we've taken on, providing value to our customers and things like that. And then, the integration with your cloud service, the cloud service providers, CloudTrails, or other threat intelligence to help people have a fuller visibility is pretty cool too. But what does a runtime policy mean, Ryan? What is that all about? Well, runtime policies are chains of different rules that let people know what is interesting or not. This is something that would be cloud. I've not enabled the cloud connector on this, so I'm not going to get any hits for this. But out of the box, this is something that's turned on if you have AWS as your cloud service provider, which we see a lot, would probably make your life a little bit easier. This is something just to see sort of like what we're looking for, what we think is not normal in a container. that comes out of the box. And the nice thing about this too, I'll mention, as Akhil was saying, or somebody was saying earlier, you don't want to be doxed to death by your, security tool. Otherwise, it's going to be something that you forget about. It's like, it's the boy that cried wolf or the girl that cried wolf. With this, we've got an ability to sit there and tune this. So if you see something that's not quite correct, or it's something that's like bursty and ridiculous, we can suppress that, or you can have us take a look. You can suppress that if you want. It's just a piece of YAML and off you go. That's policies. Rules, make those up, and then rules are based off of open source Falco. So don't want to make us all like Falco rule writers, but I was a former network engineer. I can spell IP. That's why I got the job. If we do, I don't know, network tools, like here's a rule that we've got. Oh, by the way, for those folks that are compliance, we love you. I couldn't still do your job, but you can sit there and get this metadata so you can provide that this is meeting some standard. So I like that. That doesn't come with the open source. That's something that we did because it was asked of us, and it was an easy test to do. But here's an idea of like a suspicious network tool in a container. And I like this one for a lot of reasons because it's a little bit of an eye chart, and we're not going to go into this, but okay, I've got a spawn process in a container. All right, that makes sense to Ryan, who is a network engineer and not a computer scientist. Okay, and it's a network tool process or open SSL connection. Okay, cool. Well, what does network tool process mean to Sysdig? I'm glad you asked. I don't know. All right, Ryan, this is very circular. What does a network tool binary mean? I do this a bunch for my job, and I've not committed that to memory either. If we click into this, we can see that network tool binaries are all the things that you see right there. And if you agree that those are the things that you should be on the lookout for in your environment, cool. We had a coincidence. But if those are not the things that you want, or if you'd like to add more to that list, you could easily do that by appending things to that list too. Save it, scope it, off you go. Again, containers shouldn't be virtual machines that are having like hands on a keyboard. If you're doing this well, you're creating it, it's going through some CI/CD process, it's ending up on the platform, hands off, and people are happy. Monitoring, to make sure that we've improved things versus regress things is always really good. If you're doing monitoring well, I would argue that that could be a canary in the coal mine to help you with maybe a security event. But it's things like that that help folks be on the lookout for, all the vulnerabilities actually being exploited. So I would say maybe we find ourselves in an open or a log4j type situation. There's only so many ways that you can sit there and get, remote code. You can do privilege escalation, etc. And the nice thing about Sysdig, because we're using eBPF and system calls, we can be the Rosetta Stone. So regardless of what the software is written in, there's only, yeah, I know. I asked to get that taken care of, or maybe not so obnoxious. What's nice about the system calls is, there's only so many ways to write a file, to create a network connection, to talk on a port, etc. And Sysdig understands those natively. And just like packets, the system calls don't lie. We see everything. So we've talked about policies, why they're important. We could go in and talk about a bunch of different things. I don't think it's time well spent getting you educated and being gurus at, Sysdig or Falco policies, because I'm not that guy. If you're interested, go to falco.org. Check that out. If you want to play with this, go to sysdig.com/free trial. Check it out. Yeah, I wish Akhil was here because he'd probably keep me on track. That's unfortunate, but here we are. Okay, let's have some fun.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Akhil. He's back. But so, this is me thinking of something else I've done. Can you, for example, spin up a cluster or a container with a specific compliance standard in mind or whatever, or how do I say it? Sysdig tells your EKS that you're spinning up that it has to be SOC 2 compliant, And then as it's spinning up, your container spinning up, it recognizes something that's not compliant and like just blocks it from, spinning up those workloads. And it'll say, hey, you wanted this container, but you also told me it needs to follow these rules. They don't follow these rules. Too bad, buddy. Will it do something like that?
Yeah, there's an ability for you to do that. Again, part of that is, let's see if it's infrastructure as code, it's stated, it's declarative. Let's make sure that this is built in a way that is appropriate. And then once it gets to runtime, you've got an ability to sit there and say, hey, let's put the SOC compliance. I'm not a compliance guru. Again, I said I would get fired because I'm terribly fun at parties, just not in that way. So
Yeah.
Let's ask somebody. I'm sure there's somebody at Sysdig that knows. But that's where we're driving to, I would say. And the posture and the compliance views, all of this stuff here is built on OPA. So as we see things come through, you can create what you need. If you want to create your own rules, go for it. Here's some of the policies that we give you out of the box. I don't think, what was your question about SOC 2? I don't think that's
I threw up. Yeah, just a random one.
Yeah, that one, I mean, and that's the other thing too. There is nuance between like benchmarks and I forget like what a GRC person would call this. I used to know this because I had to talk about this probably a year and a half ago, and then I promptly forgot it. So we've got this idea of policies we give you. Good question though. Maybe that's an opportunity for the team to investigate. And then here's the controls that make those up. So if you're familiar with OPA, this is sort of what makes that up. And if you want to sit there and like check that out or use that or riff off of that to build upon something else, you can certainly do that.
Okay. And then I think you did mention this earlier, but like say I did want a specific compliance report because my lawyers are bothering me, I could just print it, out and send it over to them.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think what I would do as a person, if we don't have it today, and that's a good question, I don't think I've got it populated here. I think a better way, maybe you don't want your lawyers to see that. If you've got nothing to hide, maybe a better way is to talk to them and show them and see how it's being scored and have an adult conversation. I don't know that the lawyers would probably want that. That'd probably be going too deep or exposing yourself to risk. But, check this out. I guess we can. So maybe that's something that, this is a CSV. They're lawyers though. They'll love that. They don't need flashy pictures like, the executives or the marketing people. Just joking, all of you lovely folks.
But yeah, that's cool. I like that because at least you can have that information, that data, and you could have it streamed into somewhere possibly based on those those reports.
You're absolutely right, James. It's getting the data out of one tool, getting it sucked into another tool, and then making sense of it across your enterprise or your organization. People ask for pretty reports, and we understand why. I think me as a technologist, I would sit there and chain the output from one tool into another into what we look across the organization for, and realizing that, maybe you're not a Kubernetes only type of environment. That's fine. Maybe you need to dump these into other places. We're an enterprise tool. We play nice with others. If you're using Splunk, we've got a Splunk certified app and TA. If you're using other SIM tools, off you go. So frankly, I mean, maybe as an SRE or somebody, you might be looking in the Sysdig web UI for our monitoring capability. Maybe if you're a security person, maybe you get to the Sysdig web UI by way of integration with your SOAR product or other things that get you there. But I don't know. I don't think that there's a lot of value in you living in the Sysdig web UI because you got a job. And I don't know that, we want to help you. We don't want to sit there and burden you with yet another thing to worry about or check out. I guess the last thing I'll talk about on the policies is this, what happens when we have that incident response? How do we sit there and talk to people and help them understand what's gone on? Maybe you've got logs, cool. Maybe you've got other API things from there's probably an alphabet soup worth of things that you all have from AWS that I'm ignorant of because I focus on other things, and they're usually like self-hosted on-prem. Maybe they're in your private region that the government can play with if they've got the right like security clearance. But for the folks that aren't, ridiculously trying to be like Jason Bourne, what's nice about this is, whatever the runtime policy is, I've sat there and like sort of like ribbed on automated remediation. There might be an incidence where you want this thing to stop, pause, or kill the container because maybe you've got somebody, first step of getting into your environment, then they want to sit there and pivot and do interesting things like that. So with Sysdig, again, this is a container. We can, stop, make a call to the Cube API and kill, stop, or pause the container. So if that's of interest, go for it. Just understand what you're getting to. And then, a unique differentiator of Sysdig is this ability to do captures. And we'll do one of these here in just a second. I've got this scoped up. This is a terminal shell in a container. I've grabbed a rule from our library. I didn't sit there and create this. If I click import from library, I could have connected or collected any one of these. I could have also made my own and use that as my base. I've enabled that rule. If you wanted to sit there and play with some different things, you can. Again, I've got this scoped for my entire infrastructure because this is a one node EKS cluster. It's not, some crazy thing, but I think maybe you do it for your entire infrastructure because maybe you see something like, hey, if this ever happens across the whole estate, we want to be made aware and we want this action to happen. Maybe it's something where, hey, I want to be on the lookout for, something in a namespace or a cluster or a what have you. You can do that because we're fully aware of all the different ways that you can slice and dice a Kubernetes cluster. Welcome to Cloud Native. It's a fun time over here. But the capture is interesting. And I would argue for those folks that rely on logs or, things, you may be missing something. And I'll show you sort of an example of that. But here's the capture. If you've ever done a Wireshark or a PCAP grab, this is going to look awfully similar. I've got this going into my SaaS backend. But if I was, somebody concerned about data integrity, maybe I was concerned about HIPAA, maybe I was concerned about SOC stuff, you could actually grab and throw this to your own S3 bucket. So we don't even see that data. And then if you wanted to be super secure, you could do KMS and all sorts of fun encryption on it. Merry Christmas. Have a nice life. But, that is an option. I've not chosen to do that today because this is a demo environment. And then again, just like Wireshark, you can sit there and filter, which is sort of interesting. We're not going to do that today. And I want to be notified because I got a full-time job. Let me know if I've got problems. I don't want to worry about you until you give me problems. So as I've talked, as I've got it and excited, I want to make sure that this is enabled. This is for our entire infrastructure. And we're looking for terminal shell in a container. That'll looks good to me. Let's go back here and let's go into this session, which is timed out because Ryan is a chatty guy. All right. Akhil, you back? Comments, questions, concerns?
Does my audio work now?
There you are.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
I had to get off the headphones. It's a good thing I just bought these. Yeah, but so back to your earlier question is how would I block an activity or stop an activity that wasn't compliant? I think it's with those Falco actions, right? With the kill, stop, pause a container. So we would, if there is a container that's running a process that we would not want, right, per our policies, then we can take action on that. Now we know that if you kill a container in Kubernetes, it's going to bring it back up. But then as soon as they do that action again, we'll kill it again. And we play this fun cat and mouse game. So that would be a way from stopping a process that's non-compliant. And we can tie all those to compliance through our Falco policies. That would be one way on the process side. And the other side would be with, if it's an image that we wouldn't want entering at all because it's not compliant, then we could block that with an admission controller.
Yeah, a lot going on. I forgot that the Falco rules could be part of a compliance thing, and if you needed that, you can actually enable it through the compliance dashboard that we were in earlier. Let's see a action done. We're gonna do a PCAP, or excuse me, an SCAP, system call capture, not a packet capture. So I'm gonna get into this Nginx pod. Hopefully he's still there or she's still there. Okay, lovely. I don't know. I'm a bad guy. Who am I? I'm Batman. Nope, I'm Root. Okay, that's
Really
fine.
nice.
Let's go have some fun. Let's see. Oh, what we got? Ooh, okay. Again, I'm not, the super hacker or anything like that. We do have a threat intelligence team that helps us see what's going on and then updates the rules for our SaaS customers so they can be made aware and on the lookout for things like that. Let's also do, I don't know, let's cat Etsy shadow to see what kind of fun stuff's in there. Okay, cool. I can see what I need to do. All right, like maybe I want to sit there and, beacon out to something, grab, some random like curl command to get something, and then maybe you've got like a package manager and I could do some interesting thing with that. This one I don't think does. We don't really have time to investigate if it did, but that was me. You got to see me go in. What did we do? We asked who am I? We looked to see where we were at, and then I dumped the Etsy shadow. So let's go here into events and let's see what's happened. All right, we've got 2 terminal shells in a container, probably because I was talking. And oh, one from earlier. Yep, that makes sense. I was testing to make sure that this works. If you're not a super sleuth, maybe you're an incidents responder and the developers are dragging you to containers in Kubernetes land. Okay, here's what's going to get sent to your SIM. This is information that would help you do an incidents response. You don't have to touch the tool. We've got something in this. We've got something that, did terminal shell based off of Sysdig's rule that told us to be on the lookout. Again, good. God bless you all, the compliance folks. That's the tags that those would be too. But here's how we can actually do some interesting things. If we want to view an activity audit, we could see, effectively what I did. I ran the who am I catted out the Etsy shadow. That's cool. You can get that dumped in. Merry Christmas, Merry whatever. But let's go back and let's see the capture, because I've been talking this up. Again, maybe you don't want to see the capture in Sysdig. Maybe you want this downloaded, put in as part of a playbook, and then dumped on somebody's desk that has kubectl access, because you just wouldn't give that out to anybody. You can do that too, which I really like. It's making your workflows work for you. And I think in this instance, it works similar to what those legacy workflows would be for the network or the incident responders from way back. Hopefully they're boning up on Kubernetes and containers so they can help join the fight with us. But here's this SCAP, and that was for 15-ish seconds, 20-ish seconds, because I asked for 5 seconds before the event and 15 seconds after. That's a lot of system calls in 15 seconds or 20 seconds. If I had to look at probably 4 system calls, I would give up. Mom would call me lazy. She's not wrong. Here's what's really nice about Sysdig is the executed commands, and where you can see like, what do we need to know what's going on. If you wanted to sit there and scope this down, you could. You'd probably see more if I would have extended this out a little bit longer, but because I didn't, I don't think that you should sit there and try to like get system calls for everything all the time and having like some like TiVo on your environment, because that will impose a bit of an impact. But here's where we can see the first part of this. If we go back, we can find the rest of it too. So I think that's impactful. Again, I'm me as a human in an environment, hands on a keyboard. This is probably not going to be somebody like this. You're probably going to get something through, some like embedded software that's part of your build. Maybe it's beaconing out, trying to do a curl, trying to do interesting things, and then trying to spin up and talk to some crypto miner. That's what we generally see. So I think in those instances, it's going to happen lickety split really, really fast. And unless they're Superman, you'll get it in at least a 30-second capture. If it is hands on the keyboard, you have a little bit different problem. Sysdig has an answer for that too. It's called rapid response. And what's nice about that is if you choose to deploy this in your environment, the folks with access to Sysdig, you get an extra button, and it's going to be here and under the investigate. It's effectively cloud EDR. And so for those incident responders that like say, hey, I need to see what's going on, but I don't know how to use kubectl, they can get a restricted shell and they can go through Sysdig by way of the rapid response tooling and do some interesting things there. I hope that you don't have to use that, but let's not be on the hope plan, because you might. And what happens if you don't have something to help you in that situation?
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind here is that this doesn't rely on those log files, right? Which is what we would traditionally rely on in traditional security environments to unpack an incident, because the log is supposed to contain everything that's happened, right? Because those log files disappear, we had to come up with a way to capture the detail in a meaningful way. So the way we do that is we're able to inspect processes and things of that nature at the system call level, which means that we don't miss anything. So our agent is actually, it looks into what's traversing between user space and kernel space, right? So it's like, that's pretty much everything. So we have visibility into everything at a very low level, and then we're able to make sense of that and respond to that detection at that very low level, right? And that cues off that capture process. And because we're looking in a ring buffer that's between kernel and user space, we can do that thing like where we're looking before the event and after the event. So we could set these capture files up to record up to 2.5 minutes before and after an event, because it's a 5-minute ring buffer. And we have the ability to always record. It's just if nothing interesting happens, we just flush and we don't save anything. But if there is that interesting detection event, then we queue off that capture and all that other stuff, right? So like if we've also enacted some sort of process, kill, stop, or pause on the container, we can take action on the container via the container orchestrator. And then we can also output the meaningful data into the tool that our security team's already consolidating their events into, right? So we aim to provide that visibility and that functionality, but we are also not naive enough, I guess, to think that, oh, now everyone's just going to use Sysdig to do everything they need to do. Like, no, that's not our outlook, right? We're trying to enrich the tools that these folks are already using to consolidate their events across their security environments, and we'll just feed into that tool.
Yeah, it's an interesting space. It's super dynamic. If there was a tool that did all of the things that people needed, that'd be awesome. It doesn't exist because some folks are using serverless. Some folks are using, it's a wide thing. So stay tuned. Sysdig, like our competitors, like AWS, is in a dynamic space, doing dynamic things, keeping up with people to help keep them safe as they try to keep their customers safe and provide the services and the reasons that they exist and do what they do. But I guess one last thing, we've talked about saving you time. We've talked about keeping you safe. We've talked about informing you so you have information that you need to know. Again, I think this is a plug for AWS training or other things to educate folks. Tools will help you, but let's help ourselves and let's all get better together. Because as people shift from maybe like in another environment that I generally use, I'll have like a self-hosted instance that like mimics an on-prem type of thing, and then I have, you know, the AWS cluster, and then maybe I have like other regions. We have to have this whole like guardrails across the enterprise, so we have awareness, so we can keep folks safe, because the enterprise is becoming more porous and just harder for folks to try and keep safe. A lot of rambling. I hope, good luck. It's a hard problem. We know that. We want to help you. We're all in this together. I don't know.
Rah.
Raw. Yay, go team.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of these customers that are dealing with compliance concerns are coming from some sort of legacy environment, right? So like if we're talking to a financial institution like a bank, for God's sake, they may have some like mainframes that they're still dealing with and like things of that nature, right? So their security teams are not going to go and start doing everything from a cloud security SaaS product. Like that's just not the way they're set up. So it's very important that we just enrich the tools that everybody's already using.
Why? Because security, like ogres, are
Layers.
like
Oh, they're like onions.
Yeah.
And they
Because of the layers.
stinky.
Because of the layers.
Because they're all stinky.
Because that's right.
Because they all make you cry. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's funny you said we're all in this together. It's not. When the chat was like, "Good luck. Yeah, here's your tools. Here's your security stuff. Good luck."
Yeah,
Go for
like
it.
that would be disingenuous of a vendor to do. We have cloud native like learning hub. You guys have a great, like your docs are terrific. And like, again, as I said, the innovation and the speed, it's so easy for me to have like a little bit of a working knowledge with EKS and find myself that I put a silly limit on cluster size, and now I need to drain the nodes and do something wild. And because I didn't choose the right flag, I'm flailing about, but I can be successful, and hoping to gosh that I've not exposed the enterprise. So it's fun. My boss is probably terrified. Thank God I have like a demo environment that nothing important is in.
Yeah, can't break it in real time. Should have done the demo with the enterprise environment. That'd be funny.
That's a shared environment, and I would definitely hear from very excited people about that.
No, we actually used all year tooling to set up this demo environment. We kicked it off with code build. We're using EKS clusters. The images are hosted in ECR. So we did this purposely to just kind of tie all your services together with Sysdig.
Nice.
Yeah. And I guess like for folks that are interested in like getting closer to Sysdig, we have a enablement and some trainings. We call it Kraken Hunter. I think that would be the thing for the technical folks. If you're interested, Akhil's probably your guy to reach out to. So let us know how we can help enable you. And then like, this is just barely scratching the surface. There is so much more that we could talk about. And I think the best conversations are the ones where customers or prospects are sharing what they're trying to achieve with us, so we can sit there and work together as a partner, just like AWS partners with their customers and prospects to enable them meeting like the goals and provide positive business outcomes for them to be successful.
Yeah, I just Googled Kraken. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, nothing. Yeah, I was just asking if there's any cost involved for using your products, and if so, how do we see the pricing?
Yeah, good question.
We have, so first of all, we have a free trial, which is 30 days. If there is some sort of opportunity to where a customer wants to test the product, we can engage in a POV, which would last longer than 30 days, presumably, potentially. And then on the cost basis, we do have marketplace listings. So we do transact through with you guys, right? So there's information that can be found there. But on the container security portion, we have a per host, per container host model. on billing. So I think that information should all be accessible via the marketplace. But obviously, as we get into working through a deal, we would work with you all on how the mechanics of that would work for your customer.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm just dropping all those links in the chat here so people don't have to type in the ban. That's the problem with the banners on there. It's like someone frantically be trying to type it all out. What was I gonna say though?
What, they didn't
crap.
memorize
That is
that?
very distracting, and I'm very stimulated by that crawl.
Yeah, like what is it? Like ProdView -DK at 47.5. Yeah, ugh.
Yeah, how long to actually like get that suffix correct?
Oh yeah.
How many times through?
Yeah, I was looking up. You mentioned Kraken Hunter, and the first thing that popped up was a trophy for a video game. I don't think that's the right one, but I think I found the correct link. Sysdig launches partner technical accreditation program. I like that badge. Our badge is pretty cool.
Is that blog post written by me?
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. Nice. What a coincidence.
The SEO works.
Yeah, right. Like that. We always talk about canned questions or planted questions on this show. That was not planned. That was from the hip right there. That I'm surprised that worked.
But maybe we share with the audience. I got turned in this a little bit late, and I was like, all right, James, Kruthi, what's the expectation? What are we shooting for? And can you show me a video of like if you had to submit the spoken, Emmy reel for the Emmy selection committee, like what would you do? And I don't know if we're gonna like exceed what you shared with us and maybe be the gold standard, but I've had a lot of fun today. I appreciate this. This has been a blast. So thank you for sharing your time with us, and thank you for the folks who decided to stick with us and go on this journey.
Yeah, for sure. If there's anything else, you'd like to plug before we sign off. I mentioned signing up on LinkedIn. You can find Sysdig on LinkedIn. You can find Akhil and Ryan as well. I didn't drop those links, but you can just search for them.
I'll give one last plug to piggyback on what you just said with that cool badge. If you actually go through the training, you get to add that badge to your LinkedIn profile. So,
nice.
Just throwing that out there.
What is that training like exactly? Like, is it? Oh, I could read it here. The 90-minute training, and is there like?
That's for the first portion. Yeah. So like this second portion, which is the hunter, which is a lot. It actually is the lab environment that we are using. So
cool.
It would actually be spun up by code build on EKS using ECR and all that stuff. But essentially that's like a instructor-led lab session. So it's more of a workshop that would be led by myself or someone like myself. And basically we are going through and running exploits in EKS clusters, right? So we would be extracting SQL data, looking at passwords that should be encrypted or not clear text and things like that, and showing how you could actually get that information out of a container environment, because I know a lot of that is clear as mud to a lot of folks. So we actually show how one would run an exploit and how containers are not actually true segmentation, because you can hop around if you wanted to. So we kind of show that, and then how that would trigger things in the console, and how we could use our policies out of the box to protect it against those.
Okay, so like part of it is it'll spin up at like an account or something, and then rather than you having to like intentionally go and break stuff, it's already broken, and then you can kind of see it in action. Is that kind of what I'm getting?
We have the bare constructs for how, like, basically like we have images like a security playground image, right? And then all you have to do is hit that with a couple curl commands, and that's going to actually do some stuff within the cluster, right? So that's actually going to, and we can post things and things of that nature, but it's essentially just running exploits using some pre-seeded tooling in the cluster, and then showing how that, like what that actually does on the EC2 instance and via kubectl with your Kubernetes cluster, and how that would translate into like being detected by our tooling.
I think it's nice where you run the command and then you go see it in the web UI, and what Sysdig has captured, and the depth and the visibility, sort of to Akhil's point. I had a lot of stuff going on just because I wanted to get some things going, but I also didn't want you guys to see me type terribly and screw that all up in front of you. So I saved you that.
Yeah, well, that's very cool. Yeah, maybe I'll check it out, so I can throw my LinkedIn, at least the Scout. I can at least do that part. Cool.
Yeah, I think the UI itself was really cool. At least in AWS, we have so many tools that we have to use to like get all of the logs and all of the monitoring and observability. And here, everything was just on one single plane. So yeah, I think that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and
there's a
oh, go ahead.
There's a CSPM capability that we didn't really touch into today. I did an enablement. As part of some of the compliance things, there's like asset and identities, which also builds into that too. That's another path if you want to sit there and have full visibility, super important. So like I said, a lot of things make up this, and AWS gives you that and the feeds to understand the users, the roles, how many times they've touched it, and fun stuff like that. So like, we love that you share that information out. That helps us be a better tool because of that like partnership and sharing.
Yeah.
And then also, Ryan, you mentioned, you kind of touched on how everything changes so fast and it's just so hard to keep up. I'm certified as a solutions architect professional, and I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. We got like 280 services, something like that. Like there's a new one every day, and there's specific use cases for a lot of them. But having that one kind of, like you're saying, have that one platform to kind of keep track of stuff is super helpful, and then it allows you to kind of try and keep up with the other stuff as well, because you already have that kind of in your back pocket, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, like the AWS environment, super rich, super innovative. The open source space, I feel like a part-time job could be keeping up with all the things going around, and you like, without fail, maybe you guys get this question, maybe you don't, like, does it work with this or does it work with that? And I'll say the team is pretty good about staying abreast of what's current and going on. Can we predict the future? No. I don't think you guys would sign up for saying that you could either, but I'm really pleased at the way that we can sit there and support people pretty close to things being released. So that's exciting. That's fun versus like, I guess that's, if you want to play in today's sandbox, you're going to have to be quick and fast and good because it moves so fast.
Yeah.
God, I'm getting old. I'm tired just thinking about it. Ugh.
That's actually part of the brilliance of Falco, is that it's the same tooling that we look at CloudTrail logs as we look at system calls. Because if we step back, all Falco's doing is it's parsing text from a data source. So if that data source is system calls, we're looking for a match on that text, and Falco is able to parse text very quickly. So we have something called a connector, right, which will just feed in logs. So we can feed in CloudTrail logs. And for example, every time MFA is deactivated on a device, it spits out a CloudTrail log, and the syntax is almost identical. So if we use things like, if we're matching against that syntax, we're going to catch it every time, because CloudTrail will always spit out the same exact little spiel every time that's done, right? So like with Falco, we can do the system calls to provide container security, which is really hard. But the brilliance of it is that we can feed in other data sources as well, so that we'll be able to keep up with wherever these threats are presenting themselves in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Security, what was the saying that I always joke? Security is job zero. Doesn't mean you don't do it. Yeah. We have a whole game day lined up around that.
Or tomorrow, or like maybe
tomorrow.
eventually never.
Yeah. Best time to start security was yesterday. Second best time is today.
Just like planting a tree.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else you guys want to talk about right now, we can go ahead and sign off here. Otherwise, let me know. Are you TikTok famous? Anybody want to drop their ad or something? I don't know. No.
Thank you for the opportunity and the impetus to get a Twitch handle. I didn't have that beforehand, but this was the thing. So kudos to you all. Again, thank you for sharing your time. Job well done. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully,
so when we're
folks
looking
enjoy
at a year from now at how Ryan has spent the last year of his time, this will be the day. This is the moment when his Twitch
No, this is not my. This is probably my 15 minutes, and then I'll get buried into history, just like New Coke or Crystal Pepsi or things like that.
Hey, I liked Crystal Pepsi when I was a kid. Of course, I was only like 7, so I thought it was cool. Anyway, cool. All right, yeah. Everyone, check out. We dropped a bunch of links in the chat. Everyone, check out Sysdig. Check them out on the marketplace. Check them out on their website. Do a free trial. Do the workshop and see for yourself. With that, happy trails, y'all. Any last things? I've said that like 4 times. How many last things can we have? But otherwise, we'll just call it here. And then thank everyone for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cool. Have a good day, everybody.